The letter was folded 7 times. Bruce Lee found it in his dressing room at exactly 6:47 p.m., tucked between 2 towels on the makeup table. No envelope, no name, just a single piece of paper, yellowed with age, folded so many times that the creases had become permanent. He almost threw it away. He was exhausted. Filming had run 14 hours. His body ached from performing the same kick 37 times until the director was satisfied. He wanted to shower, eat, sleep. He did not want to read another fan letter asking for an autograph or a photograph or money. But something made him stop. Maybe it was the way the paper looked. Old, worn, handled thousands of times. This was not a letter written yesterday. This was something that had been carried for years. Bruce unfolded it. What he read in the next 3 minutes would change everything he believed about his purpose, about his films, about why any of this mattered. And when the crew found him 20 minutes later, Bruce Lee was sitting alone in his dressing room, tears streaming down his face, holding a letter from a man he would never meet. This is the story that was never told. Until now. Hong Kong, Golden Harvest Studios. Stage 4. September 15th, 1972. The production of Enter the Dragon was in its 3rd week. This was the biggest film Bruce Lee had ever made. The first true co-production between Hollywood and Hong Kong. Warner Brothers had invested real money, real expectations, real pressure. Bruce arrived at the studio every morning at 5 a.m. He left every night after midnight. He was not just the star. He was the choreographer, the creative consultant, the problem solver. When something did not work, everyone looked to Bruce. The physical demands were brutal. The fight scenes required precision that no one else could achieve. Bruce performed his own stunts. Every kick, every punch, every fall. The famous mirror room sequence alone took 3 weeks to film. Bruce shattered 4 mirrors with his bare hands. The cuts on his knuckles never fully healed during production. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the mental pressure. This film had to succeed, not for Bruce personally, but for something larger, something he had been fighting for his entire career. Representation. Enter the Dragon was the first Hollywood film with an Asian leading man who was not a stereotype. Not a villain, not a servant, not comic relief. Bruce Lee played a hero, an intelligent, capable, powerful hero who happened to be Chinese. If this film failed, Hollywood would use it as proof that Asian leads did not sell tickets. They would go back to casting white actors in Asian roles. They would continue the erasure that had defined American cinema for decades. Bruce carried this weight every single day on set. No one knew how heavy it was. On the evening of September 15th, Bruce finished filming the scene where his character discovers his sister's fate. It was an emotional scene. Bruce had to convey rage, grief, and determination in a single look. The director, Robert Klaus, called for 32 takes. 32 times, Bruce summoned that emotion. 32 times, he reached into the darkest parts of himself and pulled out pain that felt real because it was real. 32 times, he gave everything he had. When the director finally said cut and print, Bruce could barely stand. He walked to his dressing room alone. He closed the door. He sat down at the makeup table and stared at his reflection. He looked old, not in years. Bruce was only 31, but in his eyes, there was a weariness that had not been there before. The weariness of a man who had been fighting his entire life and was not sure how much fight he had left. That was when he noticed the letter, tucked between 2 towels. Folded 7 times. Waiting, Bruce picked it up, unfolded it carefully. The paper was so worn that it threatened to tear at the creases. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, written by someone whose hands did not work properly. The letter began, "Dear Mr. Lee, you do not know me. We have never met. We will probably never meet. But I need you to know something before I die." Bruce stopped reading. Before I die. He looked at the date on the letter. March 3rd, 1967. More than 5 years ago. This letter had been written 5 years ago and somehow found its way to his dressing room today. He continued reading. "My name is David Chen. I am 47 years old. I was born in San Francisco. My parents came from Guangdong province. They worked in a laundry for 30 years so that I could go to college and become an engineer. I did become an engineer. I worked for Boeing for 18 years. I designed parts for airplanes. I was good at my job. I was proud of my work. But none of that matters now. 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with a disease that is destroying my muscles. The doctors call it ALS. They tell me I have 2 years to live. Maybe less. Bruce's hands began to tremble. I am writing this letter because last night I watched you on television, a show called The Green Hornet. You played a character named Kato. I need to tell you what happened when I saw you on that screen. I cried, not because I was sad, because for the first time in my 47 years, I saw someone who looked like me being strong, being capable, being heroic. Subscribe and leave a comment because the most important part of this story is still unfolding. Bruce set the letter down for a moment. His vision was blurring. He wiped his eyes and continued. Mr. Lee, you have to understand something. I grew up in America in the 1930s and 1940s. Do you know what Chinese people looked like in the movies back then? Villains, servants, buffoons. We were always the enemy, always the joke, always something to be feared or mocked. When I was 12 years old, a group of boys at my school beat me up because they said I looked like a Japanese spy. This was 1942. It did not matter that my family had been in America for 2 generations. It did not matter that my father worked 16 hours a day to pay taxes to the same government that put Japanese Americans in camps. I was Chinese. That was enough. I learned to be invisible after that. I learned to keep my head down, to not make trouble, to accept that people like me would never be seen as real Americans. For 35 years, I believed this. Then I watched you. I watched you move like water. I watched you fight with a speed and grace I had never seen. I watched you stand next to a white actor and be his equal, his partner, not his servant. And something inside me broke open. Bruce was crying now, openly. Tears falling onto the letter, smearing the ink that was already faded. Mr. Lee, I know you were just an actor on a television show. I know that Kato is just a character. But what you have done is more important than you realize. You have shown an entire generation of Chinese children that they can be heroes. You have shown their parents that their faces belong on screen. You have shown America that we are not the enemy. We're not the joke. We are not invisible. I do not know if you will ever read this letter. I do not know if it will ever reach you. But I needed to write it. I needed you to know that on March 2nd, 1967, a dying man watched you on television and felt hope for the first time in 35 years. I will probably be gone before you become the star you deserve to be. The doctors say my time is short, but I will die knowing that things are changing, that my nieces and nephews will grow up in a different world. A world where Bruce Lee exists. Thank you for that. Thank you for being visible when so many of us were forced to be invisible. Thank you for being strong when so many of us were told to be weak. Thank you for being proud when so many of us were taught to be ashamed. I fold this letter 7 times because in Chinese tradition, 7 is the number of togetherness. I hope that somehow, across time and space, this letter brings us together. A dying engineer in San Francisco and a young actor in Los Angeles. 2 Chinese men in America, both fighting in our own way. Be well, Mr. Lee. Be strong, and never stop fighting. With eternal gratitude, David Chen. Bruce sat motionless for a long time. He did not know how long. Minutes, maybe longer. The sounds of the studio outside his door faded into nothing. The ache in his muscles disappeared. The exhaustion lifted. All that remained was the letter in his hands and the weight of what it meant. David Chen had written this letter in 1967, more than 5 years ago. He had been given 2 years to live. David Chen was almost certainly dead. He had died without ever knowing if Bruce Lee received his letter, without ever knowing that his words would reach the one person who needed to hear them most, without ever knowing that on a night when Bruce Lee was ready to give up, a letter from a dying man would remind him why he could not. Bruce read the letter again, then a third time. Each reading revealed something new, a phrase he had missed, a sentiment he had not fully understood, a truth that cut deeper with each repetition. You have shown an entire generation of Chinese children that they can be heroes. This was why Bruce made films. Not for money, not for fame, not for the adulation of crowds. For David Chen. For every David Chen who had been beaten up for looking different. For every David Chen who had learned to be invisible. For every David Chen who had died believing they did not matter. Bruce Lee made films so that they would matter, so that their children would matter, so that their grandchildren would never know what it felt like to be invisible. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Lee? The assistant director's voice. We need you on set for the night shoot. Bruce did not respond immediately. Mr. Lee? Are you okay? Bruce wiped his face, folded the letter carefully along its 7 creases, placed it in his shirt pocket close to his heart. He stood up, looked at himself in the mirror. The weariness was still there, but something else was there too now. Something harder, more determined, more purposeful. He opened the door. The assistant director looked at him with concern. Sir, have you been crying? Bruce smiled, a genuine smile. I just received a reminder of why we are making this film. The assistant director did not understand, but he nodded anyway. Bruce walked to the set. He filmed for another 6 hours that night. Every kick was sharper, every movement more precise, every take more powerful. The crew noticed the change. Something was different about Bruce Lee tonight. Something had shifted. Robert Klaus pulled him aside after the final shot. Whatever happened in that dressing room, Klaus said, keep it. That is the Bruce Lee I want in every frame of this film. Bruce touched his shirt pocket, felt the letter against his chest. I will, he said. I promise. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. Enter the Dragon premiered on July 26, 1973. Bruce Lee did not live to see it. He died 6 days earlier, on July 20th, at the age of 32. But the film became exactly what he had hoped. A phenomenon. A cultural milestone. The movie that proved Asian actors could lead Hollywood blockbusters. It earned over $200 million worldwide. More importantly, it changed what was possible. After Enter the Dragon, Hollywood could never again claim that Asian leads did not sell tickets. The proof was there. The receipts were counted. The argument was over. David Chen did not live to see any of this. But his letter did. After Bruce Lee's death, Linda Lee Cadwell found the letter in Bruce's personal effects. It was still folded 7 times, still worn, still carried close to his heart. Linda read it for the first time. She understood immediately why Bruce had kept it, why he had carried it with him through the final months of filming, why he had never mentioned it to anyone. Some things are too sacred to share. Linda kept the letter private for many years. She showed it only to close family and friends, people who would understand its significance. In 1998, she finally shared the story publicly in an interview. That letter, Linda said, was everything Bruce believed in, written by someone he never met. It proved that what he was doing mattered, that his films were not just entertainment. They were representation. They were hope. They were proof that Chinese people belonged on screen as heroes. She paused. Bruce carried that letter every day for the last 10 months of his life. It was with him when he filmed the mirror scene. It was with him when he recorded his famous dialogue. It was with him when he took his final breath. The interviewer asked if the letter still existed. Linda nodded. It is in a safe place, she said. Folded 7 times, just as David Chen left it. It will never be sold. It will never be displayed. It belongs to Bruce. And through Bruce, it belongs to everyone who has ever felt invisible. The interviewer asked one final question. Did you ever find out what happened to David Chen? Linda was quiet for a long moment. We tried, she said. After Bruce died, I hired a researcher to find David Chen or his family. We searched for years. And? Linda smiled sadly. We found his grave. San Francisco. He died in November 1967, 8 months after he wrote the letter. The interviewer waited. But we also found something else. His niece. She was 11 years old when David died. He had told her about the letter, about Bruce Lee, about what it meant to finally see someone like them on screen. Linda's voice grew soft. That niece grew up to become a filmmaker. She has made 3 films about the Asian American experience. She dedicated her first film to her Uncle David and to Bruce Lee. She paused. David Chen never knew that Bruce read his letter. He never knew that his words would keep Bruce going through the hardest months of his life. He never knew that his niece would grow up to continue the work he started. Linda wiped her eyes, but I think somehow he knows now. The letter from David Chen is no longer in the Lee family's possession. In 2015, Linda donated it to the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, where it is preserved as part of their collection on Asian American contributions to film. It is still folded 7 times. Visitors are not allowed to touch it, but they can read a transcription on a nearby placard. And next to the transcription is a photograph of Bruce Lee on the set of Enter the Dragon. He is smiling. His hand is pressed against his shirt pocket. The caption reads, Bruce Lee carrying the letter from David Chen. September 1972. The letter that reminded him why representation matters. Every year, thousands of people visit that exhibit. Many of them are Asian Americans. Many of them are young. Many of them stand in front of that letter for a long time, reading the words of a dying engineer who just wanted to be seen. And many of them cry, because they understand now what David Chen understood then. Visibility is not vanity. Representation is not ego. Being seen is not a luxury. It is a right. It is a necessity. It is the difference between a 47-year-old man dying in despair and dying with hope. Bruce Lee gave David Chen that hope. And David Chen, in turn, gave Bruce Lee the purpose he needed to finish the most important film of his career. 2 men who never met. 1 letter folded 7 times. And a legacy that will last forever. September 15th, 1972. Golden Harvest Studios. Stage 4. A letter between 2 towels. And a reminder that the smallest gestures can change everything. Be visible. Be strong. Be proud. Because somewhere, someone is watching. And you might be the first hero they have ever seen who looks like them. This story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life themes.